Good afternoon, students. Welcome to the live lecture of Real Analysis 1. In the last lecture, we have completed the proof of generalized mean value theorem and second mean value theorem. Now, in today's lecture, we are going to start a new unit called as Riemann-Stieltjes integration. Riemann-Stieltjes integration is actually a generalization of the Riemann integration we have seen. What we have seen in Riemann integration, we'll just have a recall and then we will go for understanding what is the generalization, how the generalization is going to work out. Okay. In few minutes, let me just recall Riemann integration. In the Riemann integration, what we were doing is we were going to find out the integration of the given bounded function, I can say, right? It is bounded and the integration we were interested in finding on the closed interval a to b, which is actually integration of f with dx. That is, this is the integration of the function f with respect to x, no? With respect to x or with respect to x axis, you can say. And as we are saying it is with respect to x axis, whatever the curve, the area you are collecting between the curve and x axis, right? Now, why it is so? Because this is x axis, right? And this will give you the integration of your given region. For this, we are going to define two sums denoted by this symbol summation capital M I delta xi, called as the upper sum. Then LPF we can write small m I delta xi, which is actually a lower sum. And later we are going to find out the upper integral, right? Now, upper integral we have defined to be infimum of the upper sums, and that of lower integral is defined to be the, yes, supremum of the lower sum. And whenever the two integrals becomes equals, the function is said to be Riemann integrable. This is what the concepts we have seen. Now, what the pair of mathematicians have thought of. Now, here we can see the names, Riemann and Stieltjes. The introduction of the mathematician Bernhard Riemann we have seen in the first unit itself. Now, let me just write on the full name of the mathematician Stieltjes. The full name is Thomas Jonas Stieltjes. Thomas Jonas Stieltjes. He was the Dutch mathematician. He was the Dutch mathematician, and the life tenure is 29 December 1856 to 31 December 1894. And he was very famous for the moment problems, continued fraction, and he has his PhD guide, or you can say the doctoral advisor, is Darboux. Darboux is actually the mathematician who has helped Riemann while deriving the Riemann integration. And this mathematician Thomas Stieltjes worked under his guidance for his PhD degree. So for the pair of mathematicians, Riemann and Stieltjes has thought of why we were finding the integration of function with respect to one horizontal axis. What happens if we were interested in finding the integration of one function with respect to another function? That is, instead of finding with respect to x-axis, we were interested in finding the area bounded by one function with respect to the other function. Now here the word with respect to the other function, now it makes some things to be some complicated, you can say. Therefore, by keeping this point in mind, why not to derive the integration of function with respect to other function? If it is with respect to x-axis, the job is quite easier for us, right? No. But if I'm moving this function or integration of function with respect to other function, then they have generalized the concepts as. Therefore, they have started with the assumption that both the functions are bounded. Okay. Therefore, here I'll just write, I can say the definition or introduction I can write. So they have started with the two functions f and alpha. Both are the bounded functions, because boundedness is an essential condition to find out the integration. Right now, if the function is not bounded, it is difficult for us to get the area bounded by those functions, though it is with respect to x-axis or though it is with respect to the another function. That's a challenge. Therefore, both the functions under the consideration f and alpha must be the bounded function, And one more restriction they have followed is alpha is monotonic increasing function. Alpha is monotonic increasing function. Why monotonic increasing? Why you think monotonic increasing is essential? Because whenever we were interested in finding the area of a function with respect to x-axis, as we go on the right side, whether the values are increasing or decreasing for the variable x. Yes?
Increasing.
Yes, the values are increasing. Means the x-axis itself, I can say, is a it's sort of increasing function, right now? Correct now? Therefore, the same property was maintained to find out the area of a function with respect to the other function. Suppose here I am finding the integration of f with respect to the function alpha over the range a to b. Therefore, as of the x-axis, this alpha must be monotonic increasing. And the first condition is both the functions must be bounded. Okay. Then same kind of partition was there. What kind of partition we were considering? We have considered in the last discussion. A equals to x naught, x1, x2, so on, up to xn is equals to b. Right now, let this be a partition. After finding the partition, we have given the delta xi value. No, that is, suppose this is my interval. This is the interval we were making. Let me write it on the okay. Suppose this is alpha function with respect to which we are finding the integration. Here by looking at the curve, you can say this will be a increasing function. Then let us make the partition of the given x-axis x naught, x1, so on up to xn. With respect to these values, your alpha takes some values, no? Alpha x naught, alpha x1, alpha x2, alpha x3, so on up to the stage alpha xn. And looking at this, all the alpha values are increasing. And as of we were interested in finding the integration with respect to the function, we were going to find out the delta alpha I. That is what will be a change in the alpha function values, right? Therefore, here we were going to write delta alpha I. What is delta alpha I? Somewhere here we have xi minus 1 to xi as the ith subinterval. And corresponding to this ith subinterval, we have the values say alpha xi minus 1 and let this be alpha xi. Okay, and both the values are going to represent on this axis. Because what this is my range delta alpha I. Is that okay? This is the change in alpha function with respect to ith subinterval, you can say. Okay. Therefore, delta alpha I they have defined as alpha xi minus alpha xi minus 1. Is that okay? Previously in the Riemann integration concept, what we have defined delta xi is this is xi minus 1. Correct now? Yes. Now, with
Yes, ma'am.
respect to alpha, we were finding that's why we will observe the change in alpha function as we have the change in the ith subinterval. Therefore, delta alpha I is the constant defined. And as of the nature of this alpha is monotonically increasing, may I say this value is always non-negative. Right? No?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then the pair of mathematicians they have defined two terms very similar to the previous two sums, upper sums and lower sums again, but with some different symbol. What is the symbol we have used previously? U. Upper sum with respect to partition. P for the function here. Now one more term is added here with respect to alpha. Is that okay? Similarly, lower sum of, with respect to p of a function f now with respect to alpha as well. Is that okay? And the sums are defined as summation I equals to 1 to n capital Mi into delta alpha I. Similarly, the lower sum was given as small mi into delta alpha I. Is that okay? Very similar to the sums we have defined in Riemann integration case. Instead of that delta xi, It was replaced by delta alpha I. Is that okay? Understood the change? As of we were finding the integration of function f with respect to the other function alpha. This was delta alpha and these are the two sums defined. Where the rest things are same, capital Mi is the suprema, small mi is the infima of the function, right now? Right? Where capital Mi and small mi are, yes, supremum and infimum of f on ith subinterval respectively. Is that okay? Okay. Same concept was generalized. Next concept derived is upper integral and lower integral. Upper integral and lower integral. Before that, as of we were defining upper integral as an infimum of upper sum, we should make sure that the infima exists. In order to show the infimum of a set of upper sum exists, we have to make sure the set of upper sums is bounded or either bounded below. But just to make both the sets UPF alpha and LPF alpha are bounded, we were going to prove some inequality right now. Now for this, if I am writing small m and capital M are infima and suprema of F on closed interval A to B, right? Then what is the relation between your mi, small mi, capital Mi? This we have studied already in case of Riemann.
Less than or equal.
Very good. For every stage, for every type,
Yes, ma'am.
yes it is. Okay. But if I want to construct a term of this upper sum, what I have to do? I have to multiply by delta alpha and I have to take a sum over I equals to 1 to n. But here we will do the same thing. Multiply by delta alpha I and sum over I equals to 1 to n. Whether the inequality changes? No. If I multiply by delta alpha, inequality will not be changed because we know the nature of delta alpha is non-negative. Therefore, shall I write the last step? Summation I equals to 1 to n. Small mi delta alpha I less than or equals to summation I equals to 1 to n. Small mi delta alpha I less than or equals to summation I equals to 1 to n. Capital Mi delta alpha I. Is that okay? And which will be lastly less than or equals to summation I equals to 1 to n capital M into delta alpha. Now look at this last terms. Small m and this capital M are independent of I. There is no I involved. So we can take the values out of the summation. First, here this is small m into summation delta alpha. Then write the value of delta alpha I as well. What is delta alpha I? Is it alpha xi minus alpha xi minus 1? Right now, summation I running from 1 to n. Middle two values, shall I write directly? This is LPF alpha and this is UPF alpha. Okay, which is again less than or equals to capital M into summation I equals to 1 to n alpha xi minus alpha xi minus 1. Now just look at this last term carefully or the first term carefully. If I run up the sum over I, what kind of expression we will get? For I equals to 1. What is the value? Alpha x1 minus alpha x0. Right now, what for I equals to 2? Is it correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if I continue this up to the value of I is equals to n, may I write this gives us alpha x1 minus alpha x n minus 1. Now check out what will be the expression. Alpha xn,
Alpha xn minus
right?
alpha xn minus alpha x naught.
Very good. Okay, we remains with this term only. Therefore, I am going to write it directly. Alpha xn small alpha xn minus alpha x naught less than or equals to lower sum less than or equals to upper sum less than or equals to same na to the right side as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but what is alpha xn? Alpha xn is alpha b, no? Alpha b minus alpha a, lower sum less than or equals to upper sum. Here alpha I forgot. And here also I have written after. Yes, let me just take a correction. Yes. Which is less than or equals to m times. Here also I can write alpha b minus alpha a. Okay. Now, if you look at this right side, this one and this one, may I say m and m capital M are fixed? Alpha b minus alpha a are also fixed because the end points of the interval are always fixed. So may I say these are the fixed values? This is also fixed and this is also a fixed scalar rather. Therefore, whatever is your partition, whatever is your function and whatever is your alpha, may I say for that we get the set to be bounded sets,
Yes, ma'am.
right?
Yes,
No,
ma'am.
because the values of that UPF alpha lies between small m times alpha b minus alpha a to capital M times alpha b minus a. Means for the set of upper sums, may I say it is bounded. Similarly, the set of lower sum is also bounded. Okay. Can you tell me the bounds for the same upper sum, set of upper sum and set of lower sum in case of Riemann integration? Same kind of expression we have obtained. Can anyone tell me what are the bounds for those? लेफ्ट राईटच्या क्वांटिटीज वेगळ्या होत्या बघा फक्त आठवतंय का आठवतंय का काय होत्या क्वांटिटीज which is small m times b minus a to capital M times b minus a na I think 100
Yes, ma'am.
times I told this the values lies between small m times b minus a to capital M times b minus a but here instead of small m times b minus a what we have small m times alpha b minus alpha a. So here this inequality gives us the information that the set of all upper sum and set of lower sum is bounded. If it is bounded, let us follow the same methodology to define the upper and lower integral. What is the definition for upper integral? Yes. The symbol is a to b upper bar of d alpha it is, no? What is the definition?
Yes, ma'am. Infimum of UPF alpha.
Very good.
And P is the partition.
Yes, P is partition of
A to B.
closed interval A to B for any partition that is we were saying. And here it is suprema of set of all. Right. Here P is the partition. Okay. These are the two integrals are defined. Okay. Respectively, this is called as upper integral and this is called as lower integral. Okay. Then what will be the definition of integrability? What is the definition of integrability?
Upper integral is equal to lower integral.
Very good. Definition of integrability is the function f is said to be integrable with respect to alpha. With respect to x, we are writing now with respect to alpha if say lower integral f d alpha is equals to upper integral f d alpha which is equals to actual integration f d alpha. And whenever the function is integrable, we write this as f belongs to R alpha of closed interval AB. For Riemann integration, we have written R of AB, no? Here it is R alpha we have written. This R do not means real number. This is a Riemann integration. Therefore, this is a collection. R alpha of AB is the collection of Riemann integrable functions over the closed interval A to B. Is that okay? Okay. Now, as of this upper integral is infimum of upper integral is infimum of upper sum. What is the relation between upper sum and upper integral?
Less than equal to.
Very good. Therefore, may I write by using the previous inequality alpha b minus alpha a less equal by lower sum. Now I want a relation here, lower integral per integral, and I want relation between arbitrary upper sum and which is already we have proved less equal by capital M times alpha b minus alpha a. Therefore, as this upper integral is infimum of upper sum, upper integral is less equal by upper sum. Always a lower integral is less equal by upper integral. Lower integral is supremum of upper sum. Therefore, here also we have this relation. Okay. So this is what an important inequality we have seen regarding the definition. If anyone is having a doubt on this, you can ask me. I'll give some numbers to this equation because I wanted to use it further. 1, 2 and here for the last one I'll call it as 3. Is that okay? काय केलं लक्षात येते का जनरलायझेशन केलं म्हणजे त्यांनी काय केलं फक्त instead of with respect to finding the integration with respect to x axis they will try to find out the integration with respect to a function. Okay, now when we have a question, what will be a geometrical interpretation of this? Whether you have a question or not. Okay. Wait for a few minutes, students. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Hello. Hi students, here we have seen the definition of Riemann-Stieltjes integration. Any doubt with this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We will stop here. Thank you.